really, if you want to discuss a certain topic, you could just bring it up instead of manipulating other people into bringing it up. Crazy thought, I know. Anyway, I found this whole discussion pretty boring so far, which disappoints me because I really, really like this book and I think there's a lot to discuss in it. And I wanted to switch it up this week and do my sociolinguistics video that I mentioned last week, this week. But I'm still in the research phase for that, so it needs more work before I can get to it, because I want it to be good. I want it to be good for you, and I found a whole dissertation on the dialect of Birmingham, so I gotta read good chunks of that. So this weekend I actually recorded 2 videos, but the files kept getting screwed up. And that was just talking about what characters I actually did like or appreciate as characters in the novel. But this morning, while I was waiting for the school library to open, because I get to school at 6:30 in the morning, and the library opens at 8:30 in the morning. So I was on Tumblr, of course, because what else would I be doing? It's not like I had an essay to do. And some of you probably already know this, J.K. Rowling was interviewed on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. And I didn't get to see the actual interview yet, but I saw a gift set of her talking about how if she had not been basically the poorest you can get in the UK without being homeless, she would never have been able to write that book. And this got me thinking about how I think regardless of how you feel about the writing or how you feel about the characters or how you feel about your enjoyment of the book, I think this book is really important, and I really love that it came out now, and I wish it were a bigger deal than it has been. Like, I feel like overall the attention, the build-up to it was really great, but then people kind of didn't care once it was released. A lot of people didn't even bother to read it. It's not just they read it and didn't like it. So I just wanted to talk about that for a bit, about why I think this book is really important and why it really resonated with me, because that was really why I really enjoyed this book. It wasn't the characters, it wasn't the writing, it wasn't anything like that. It was more the socio-political aspects of it and the context that the book comes in. The historical context of the book. In literature, we talk about historical context all the time, but we're not used to talking about historical context when the book was just released, a couple weeks ago. So, as a disclaimer, I'm American, in case you hadn't noticed. And obviously the casual vacancy is set in the UK. And I will admit, the only thing I know about UK politics is that pictures of Ed Miliband and Boris Johnson will never not be funny, because seriously, have you seen pictures of them? So, this whole video is coming from an American socio-political perspective, and I also just got done watching the second presidential debate between Mitt R-money and Barack Obama, and that got me thinking about a lot of things. There weren't any issues that were brought up. They didn't bring up healthcare, they didn't bring up a lot of things, but they did bring up economic related things, so that got me thinking about this more too. And it also delayed my video because I had classes all day. So this might actually go up on Wednesday. I talked to Lauren and she said I could hijack her day, so hopefully I don't end up accidentally hijacking Kalinda's day. If I did, I'm sorry. The casual vacancy really gets into, I think, basically what it's like to not be yourself, assuming that the audience of this book is middle class or higher, or at least not, even if they are working class or lower middle or anything like that, they're not desperately poor, they're not the crystals of this world, are not the people likely to be reading this book. Which, really, if you look at demographics of people who go out and buy a novel, especially one that was, as Katie has pointed out, as expensive as this one was, I paid almost $18 for the Kindle edition. Not even an actual book. I don't even get to feel it up like Kalinda does. I tried with the library copy at school, but they had that stupid plastic stuff over it, so it just felt like plastic. One thing that's really coming up a lot in this presidential campaign, and I think in recent politics in general, are government benefits to poor people. namely healthcare. People don't want to pay for poor people's healthcare. Not if you're rich, you don't want to help them. Welfare, and people don't want to pay for poor people to not work because nobody who's on welfare works. Or so they say. Food stamps, again, why should we pay for those poor lazy people to eat? Eating is so overrated. You get the picture, all these issues of basically those who are better off helping out those who are worse off. The main conflict of the book is not really the election and all of the stuff that entails, which is, I think, what Dan was referencing when he was talking about the plot of the book, because that is what drives the plot along. But the whole real central conflict was more about whether or not the people of Pagford should be, in a way, supporting the people that live in the fields. And, you know, there are a lot of people, the people like Howard, the well-off people who've lived there forever, and why isn't everyone else just like us, think, well, why should those people go to our schools? They can go to their own school in the city. Well, when you look at it from a sociological perspective, where a school is located has a major impact on the quality of the school. Inner city schools are notoriously lower performing than schools in the suburbs, especially schools in wealthy suburbs. There's more money, of course, there because they're wealthier people. The property's higher, so their property taxes are higher. Again, I don't know how schools are funded in the UK, so I'm going off of here in the US where they're funded off of property taxes. At least in Pennsylvania they are. I don't even know if that's the same in other states. Sorry. So higher property taxes means more money for the local school board to dispense to the local school district. They get more money. It doesn't really go out because, again, at least here in Pennsylvania, the funding for the schools is largely localized. It's not just everyone pays taxes to the state and then funds get distributed through the state, let alone funds getting distributed evenly throughout the whole country. It really depends on where a school is. Also, if a school is in a very dangerous area, it's harder to get qualified teachers to teach there because they want to teach at the safe school, not the place where they might get stabbed. I can't imagine why. It's not like they don't get paid much or anything. So, the whole issue of the kids from the fields being allowed to go to St. Thomas's is a huge, huge issue. And we see people like Barry, who grew up in the fields, who is basically... Barry is that person that wealthier people like to hold up as, well, why couldn't all the rest of you have done this? Because Barry, although he grew up in the fields, he ended up having a lot of advantages. He did very well at school. I can't really remember the details of him too clearly, but it is mentioned that he went to university. And interestingly, Howard did not, which I found that interesting primarily because usually we associate higher levels of income with higher levels of education, whereas it was reversed there. Barry is that guy that people with the, well, you just need to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and get going here. You're poor because you're lazy. Barry is the guy that people like that, who believe that sort of thing, like to use as an example of, well, he did it. Why can't you? Barry doesn't have a drug problem. I can't remember if it was... I can't remember, so somebody who actually remembers or has the time to actually go back through the book and look. Katie, if you see this, you're going to be the most recent one who read this, so if you could tell me, I can't remember whether or not there was any drug problems with Barry's mother. I believe she was a prostitute, though. Crystal has, of course, a huge history with drug addiction in her family. Barry isn't dedicating all of his time to helping younger siblings, as far as I remember, so he has more time to put into school. Also, some people, let's face it, just are more inclined to do well in school, and not everyone's inclined to be super academic, and that's okay. I feel like we as nerds kind of don't really acknowledge that very much, that we're not actually better than non-nerds, we're just different. And it's okay for someone to not be all about their education. And it's okay for them to have other concerns that are more pressing issues for them. And it's okay for someone's life to just be really messed up. That doesn't mean that they deserve their life to continue to be messed up completely forever. Especially if it's a situation that they were born into, like we see with Crystal. So Barry, despite growing up in the field, he does have some advantages. He obviously did well enough at school to get scholarships, to pay for going to university, which, that's, again, at least here in the United States, that's really hard to get enough for someone from that economic status to actually pay to go to a university, let alone a good university, and actually be able to then get the job that you need to actually move to the suburbs and achieve the dream, or what the dream is supposed to be. It's that concept of the dream. I will, again, like I said, this is an American slanted video because that's my perspective. To get into kind of the concept of the American dream, like we discussed or like you guys discussed, not me, because I still haven't read the book, but like you guys discussed when you read The Great Gatsby, this concept of the American dream and how it, to me, and I feel like this theme was echoed in the book, not in a specifically American way, but just that idea. The dream is different for different people, and that's okay. For Crystal, her dream is literally just to take care of her little brother. That's all she wants. That's her entire motivator, is just to take care of Robbie, which is why it's so incredibly tragic that in trying to, again, use the major spoiler, in trying to take care of Robbie and secure his future, at least to have at least what she had, let alone anything better than that. She's not even expecting that much for his life. Just at least give him what she had. That in trying to secure that from him, he died. Which is then, of course, what drives her to suicide, and I will get to that in a bit. But I find it really interesting in that there's the concept of the dream is different for different people. Obviously, it's very different for Barry than it is for Crystal. Barry was able to, we assume, achieve his dream of, move to the suburbs, have a family with 2.5 kids, and all of that. He became a well-respected member of the community, as we see, even though a lot of people hated him, he's still a well-respected member of the community, which is not something that you would expect of someone from the fields. They're not well-respected at all. And anyway, getting to the other thing I wanted to discuss that I felt from a sociological, or I guess more psychological perspective, really, but more, it's a still social thing, is the idea of circumstantial suicide, is what I'm going to call it. Basically, which is, you could argue the case with all suicides, that it's circumstances, although I don't really agree with that. It could be mental illness, it could be a variety of things that lead someone to commit suicide, not always necessarily the immediate circumstances of something tragic just happened, now I will kill myself. In most people that I know who are suicidal, and I know a lot of people who are or have been suicidal, it's usually just, this bad thing happened, then this. Oh, I also have mental illnesses to deal with, also this keeps happening, and this keeps happening, and it's the build-up. Whereas with Crystal, we have that build up a little bit, but there's no indication that she's suicidal until she actually goes to kill herself. And it was all based on Robbie's death, because like I said, her entire dream is to take care of Robbie. That's what her life is based on, and now that she failed in that as much as she could have possibly failed in it. Although, personally, I don't think that Robbie's death was her fault at all, because I understand why she was doing what she was doing at the time of his death, and that it was to try and protect him. But in her mind, she has failed more than she thought possible to fail. This failure is so great, and her entire life rested on this. There is no longer a point to her life outside of Robbie. Which was a thing that I found interesting, and not really related, and I didn't expect the video to go that way. But I think it's a good ending. So, Kalinda, I will see you tomorrow. I've never said that before. This Tuesday thing is weird. I don't know how you do this, Lauren. Tuesdays are just weird. Kalinda has the good day, Wednesday. Wednesday's a good day for vlogging. I'm gonna go now. Bye. One other thing I did want to mention that was in my script for the original video, and I completely missed it, is there was one major problem that I had from a sociological perspective with this book, and that is that the topic of racism is never really covered. We get it a tiny little bit with the Jawandas, but they're middle class, so it's different for them, because I think it's a very dangerous thing to take classism just by itself without realizing the way that racism and classism intersect with each other, because it has a major impact on the experience of the individual, what different things they have to deal with, and what institutions of society are working against them in what ways. So that was a problem that I kind of had with it, and I just wanted to mention that.